Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I'm here with Brit. What's up, Brit?
Hello, hello.
And today we are discussing Superman, Wonder Woman, and Cyclops and Emma Frost. So let's do this. Cyclops and I'm sorry, Cameron, I got to say this. Cyclops and Emma Frost is my favorite Marvel couple. So, Brit, how familiar are you with the characters of Cyclops and Emma Frost?
I'm familiar, from the cartoons and some panels I've seen throughout Twitter and stuff, but not their relationship itself. I'm not familiar with.
Oh boy, do you have something? Are you about to see something interesting? So here's the thing. Whenever Brit says, "Oh, Marvel seems to have it all together," this is the example I always use of no, they do not.
And
So
you really said, okay, Brit. You really said, okay.
I'm like, challenge accepted. Let's do this. So let's get into this. So for Cyclops and Emma Frost, it's find the status quo, and that's the first similarity that we find between these two couples is that they both are not the traditional pairings, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
And that's go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it's honestly with the whole traditional thing, even in reality, we are past going, along with tradition. And then they have a multiverse. I don't understand why they have to try to stick to this status quo, and align themselves with such a limiting point of view of these characters when honestly, even if it's controversial, these pairings still have investment of fans and they grab attention. So, I mean, just use the multiverse, and it doesn't have to be this constraint or whatever to, I guess, feel threatened. The traditional pairings have this certain looming they feel threatened, and it's kind of like why when you have the multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about these because here's the thing. A lot of these traditional pairings are threatened by the multiverse because it's like if people see in some way how much better say SuperWonder is than what's the word than Chloe, or in this very special case in terms of how much better Emma is for Scott. Okay, you did. It's very, very interesting here. So let's start with first appearances. So Scott Summers has existed as long as the X-Men have existed. He was one of the original group. And what's interesting about Cyclops, particularly compared to Superman, is that for the longest time he was seen as the Boy Scout, the team leader, the goody two shoes, if you will. Now, Emma, her first appearance was in the Claremont run in Uncanny X-Men 129 and 80. She was co-created by John Byrne. So now here's the thing. She was a villain, like a straight up super villain in the Hellfire Club. And we kind of saw this in the original X-Men 97 cartoon and a little bit in the actual 97 cartoon. And so the Hellfire Club was this group of elite mutants. It's like a secret club. And excuse me, they she co-led it with Sebastian Shaw. And if you watch X-Men First Class, it's basically that. Only that is in no way Emma Frost. That is the worst portrayal of Emma Frost ever. I'll get into that later. But the thing you have to understand, so at some point, Emma breaks off. But actually, so it's kind of interesting, they gave her a mini series that was her origin. And the way her origin works is that she was in a private prep school. She comes from a very well-off family. And see, here's the thing. She was in love with someone, and this particular individual loved her back until he found out she was a mutant.
Oh,
and
that's sad.
particularly with her powers because she can like read minds and stuff. So she did that, and then she was manipulated by her college roommate, who's also a mutant with mind powers. So that's like what sort of pushed her toward that like dark
Villainy.
portion. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a nature nurture like thing. So that that's one of the really cool things about this, about how her story is one of redemption. Now for this, now I reorganized the show notes a little bit. I wanted to start with the significant storylines first. So
Okay.
so in Grant Morrison's New X-Men, so after Grant Morrison basically saved the Justice League as a book, he was brought in by Marvel to revitalize the X-Men. And one of the things he did was he was there was this event, and they showed this, by the way, in the 97 cartoon, the whole scenario when Gambit died, that is pretty much from this comic. And the X-Men show up, and it's like in ruins. It's the island of Genosha, and it was supposed to be like a safe haven for mutants. Cassandra Nova launches a sentinel at it and blows it up. Now, at this point, this is when Emma is first able to turn to Diamond, because Grant Morrison retconned in the ability that some mutants have two abilities, like Emma having mind powers and like the Diamond form. However, when she's in Diamond form, she cannot use her mind powers. I always felt that that was kind of cool how they gave her a little bit of a check on that. So she joins the X-Men. And this is where you get into the telepathic affair thing, because Scott was married to Jean Grey at the time. And this is kind of where a lot of people don't like her as a character because of this one thing. And I'm like, yeah, it was contrived, but when you see what leads, what follows, plus the fact Jean dies and comes back to life all the time. So I'm like, at this point, when is he gonna say, okay, I would date you, but you die and come back to life so much it's becoming emotional abuse. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I wash my hands of this. And he got with Emma. And the thing is, you know that saying that couples have, it's like, you make me a better person.
Right.
That is definitely this, because throughout their relationship, Scott made Emma a more warm person. And that's like one of the things that keeps being forgotten. It's like, and then Marvel, of course, and I'll say this later on as we go, royally screwed it up to the point where they kind of make it so Emma made him more evil. So it's kind of like when Wonder Woman made Injustice Superman more evil.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Well, first let me go back to
Yeah.
the threatening of the multiverse. Um, that is basically where like Superman and Wonder Woman flourished. You know, when you have Kingdom Come, you have controversial kind of like these weird Elseworlds, you know, like Distant Fire. It was before Dark Knight of Steel. It was a one shot, like type medieval story, and Clark and Diana, I believe, are betrothed there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you have that never became fully um, infutation of Alan Moore's Twilight of the superheroes, but but that inspired Kingdom Come. Um, and then you have, you know, mainline teases here and there, but that build up, you have to show Clark and Diana's relationship slowly build from a friendship to and a partnership and an understanding to a potential romance. And it's
Mm-hmm.
much better how it's built upon of them, you know, understanding each other's perspective of as we say, outsiders, as the immigrant and the refugee, and with and also the farm boy and the island girl, but at the same time, you're not simplifying it to the point of this kind of like generic, corny way, and very shallow.
Mhm.
It's not that, and I feel like a lot of times it's a lot of projection of these traditional fans.
Mhm.
They, in order for their traditional relationship to work, but you can poke holes, which we have done with Clois a lot of times, even now.
Because there's so many holes in that.
Right. Like
One of
Swiss
which
cheese.
being Lois herself.
Basically like Swiss cheese. Um, um, you when you actually just analyze it and you see the contrivances, that DC and all of the jumping through hoops DC has to do to make Clois work. But with Clark and Diana, it's so natural, and that is pretty much why Diana isn't in guest appearing in Superman books anymore. Of course, you have Superman guest starring in her book because it's glorifying him. You have these writers that want to make it seem like he's still this, like, even if they are respectful as best friends, it's still Diana um, respecting Clark a little bit more than him respecting her. And
Yeah,
that
exactly.
has been a problem in the Wonder Woman books. And then on Superman's side, she's ignored. Like it's kind of like she does not exist at all. Um, so yeah, I see that similarity with Scott and Emma is how Scott is kind of like the Boy Scout
Mhm.
of the team, and so is Clark. And then you have this woman who understands, um, Scott or Clark, and she's not trying to turn him evil. She's just trying to bring out that confidence, within him without coddling him. She's just trying to, she sees the potential as a true leader.
Mhm.
And that's how these characters are supposed to be. But DC and Marvel writers and editors, they just can't write relationships correctly. They can't write um, strong women correctly because they go overboard. It's no balance. It's just either she's going to be a den mother, coddler, the and baby the male character, or she's going to be a female dog, or
Mhm.
and
She's gonna have
soon,
a lot of sugar honey iced tea.
yeah, and she's going to be perceived as evil. So yeah, I saw when researching what I could, it was kind of like, oh yeah, definitely DC, Marvel, definitely the same issues.
Exactly. So then, and by the way, Brit, there's gonna be so many of me using the words "he who must not be named" on this stream because, geez.
I saw,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Mr. Perv also wrote some X-Men, and this was like, so at this point they made because previous to this run, the Xavier School was just a training course for them to be X-Men. Now it's like an actual school where you can learn like statistics and all that stuff. So again with this run, and actually this is a thing where like they also did a part of this run where like Emma may have betrayed the X-Men, but she later like went back with them. And this is also the first time that they have said "I love you" to each other, and they stayed together. Now I'm gonna skip that because the next one's kind of interesting, and I don't like Joss Whedon. The point is, this run was actually pretty decent. I enjoyed it. So, by the way, so actually going back to that, this was when Colossus came back to life. Do you know who Colossus is?
Yes.
Yeah, because previous to this, so he had been dead for many years because the a Marvel instituted this thing called the legacy virus, and it's the idea. It's basically AIDS for mutants. So the X-Men created a cure, but someone had to test it and power up. But if they tested and powered up, they would die. So Colossus did it. He died and cured. but then they bring him back here. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Then we get House of M. I assume you know who the who Wanda is, right?
I definitely do.
All right. So He Who Must Not Be Named started the foundation for this goes all the way back to an Avengers book. So what happened is in the early 2000s, He Who Must Not Be Named, okay, screw it, Bendis was going around saying, why aren't the Avengers cool? Why aren't like Spider-Man and Wolverine and the characters that actually sell comics on the Avengers? So he did that. So he did the story called Avengers Disassembled. It's supposed to be known as the worst day in Avengers history. What happened was, so Scarlet Witch and Scarlet Witch and the Vision, like essentially had were in a relationship, and they originally had kids, but I think like they were like fake, and they were like they were like constructs by Wanda, so she had to like get rid of them. So at one point, she and Wasp are lounging at the pool, and Wasp goes, "Oh my gosh, kids!" And you thought you could have two of them, and then Wanda goes, "Come again," because they had wiped her mind of her ever having kids. So when she found out about it, she had a mental snap and killed a bunch of the Avengers, and then Magneto and Professor X take her to the ruins of Genosha to try and like work on healing her mind. So the thing is, like with House of M, what happens is the Avengers and the X-Men group up and essentially say, okay, so she has the powers to, excuse me, she has the powers to warp reality. So they're like, okay, I get that she's our friend, but at a certain point, she is a danger. We may have to actually put her in the ground. So they show up at Genosha. There's a flash of light, and all of a sudden, they're in this new world. Because what Wanda had done is she created a world where she had her kids, and so the Avengers wouldn't try and stop her. She gave them everything they've ever wanted, like Spider-Man's Uncle Ben is alive. Cyclops and Emma Frost apparently wanted to be married. Captain America didn't get frozen in ice and got to live a normal life. So what happened is then they start undoing this. The first person to actually figure out what's happening is Wolverine, because what Wolverine has always wanted is to remember what happened to him. So when Wanda put him in the House of M thing, he remembered the way the universe used to be because he remembers everything about his past now. So he has to rally the Avengers and the X-Men to like stop Wanda. It turns out, so the reason why it's called the House of M is because everyone thinks it's Magneto that forced her to create this new reality, because in this reality, the mutants are the majority and humans are the minority. So they're like, okay, it's obviously Magneto. Nope, it was Quicksilver who essentially didn't want the Avengers and X-Men to kill her, to kill her. So he convinced her of this entire scenario. So Magneto kills Quicksilver, but he's immediately brought back by Wanda, and Wanda goes, "Okay, you are a horrible father. Do you because Quicksilver and Wanda are actually his kids?" So they go. So Wanda goes, "Okay, you made us super villains. You did all this crap to us, all in the favor of mutants. Well, you know what I think? No more mutants." And then she resets reality again. So at the same time as she says that, Emma and Doctor Strange put like a force field around all the mutants that are there, because what happens to most of the mutants in the world, they are depowered, like completely depowered. They're not mutants anymore, except for the ones that were like in the bubble. Because what Marvel editorial started to think is that there's going to be way too many mutants to the point that we can't justify the mutants are a minority thing. So they're like, yeah, we got to whittle this down. So that's what happened with House of M.
So is that where that
yeah,
meme come from?
No more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in the X-Men lore, it's called the Decimation. Later, it be undone. But anyway, so then we get here's what I've added 2 stories to this that I wanted to mention. So we have Phoenix End Song. This story is bad. It involves a zombie Jean Grey coming back to life because Jean has been dead since in the Grant Morrison run, so she's dead. But the reason why I bring this back is because this line will be referenced in the next story. So the cool thing about Emma is that since she can turn to diamonds, Scott can open his eyes without his visor. And at one point, Emma will mention in a future story that she feels special because of her diamond form. She's the only one that knows what Scott's eyes really look like.
Wow.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
See, they have such... Okay, so now we can connect that to Clark and Diana's relationship, or, is the fact that she calls him Cal, that she is, special enough to be the only one besides Kara to really, to call him Cal. And it evolved into something special between them. It was more of an endearment or something like that between them, other than calling him Smallville, which is actually in a sense still belittling him. The way Lois, they want to romanticize it and say, oh, she just called him Smallville. No, that derived from her is basically like she just romanticized a slur in a sense.
Exactly. That's like essentially if I dated a black woman and called her the N-word.
Right. So, when Diana calls him Cal, it reminds him of course, Krypton, and she's honoring, his world, and essentially having him remember who he is, But at the same time, you have editorial writers, fans thinking that, oh, because she calls him Cal, that means that she wants to take his humanity away. So yeah, I now explaining the stories and these certain significant moments between Scott and Emma, I'm able to connect more with Clark and Diana.
Yeah, exactly. And then, basically Lois calls him a hick. That is true. And then, okay. So in an alternate continuity, they did make it so Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who are brother and sister, also banged.
What?
Again, Marvel is just as bad as DC, in many ways worse. So,
God.
Yeah, and close fans would say you're thinking too deep. It's not that serious. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so then we get to this is one of my favorites. So Scott and Emma go on a vacation, and again, this is really cool. So one of the things that really attracts Emma to Scott is his intellect and his like tactical mind. And what's kind of interesting is so they're in what's called the Savage Land, which is basically a primordial like world where like dinosaurs still exist and stuff. So they're hanging out with Kazar and Shauna, and they're basically like kind of cave people, but highly intelligent. But anyway, so Emma is like watching Scott, and she can like see how he's like tactically trying to figure out how they're going to kill this monster. And then this is where Emma says, essentially, Shauna goes, oh, I see why you fancy him, Emma, but I don't know how you can stand not seeing his eyes. And then Emma goes, I can turn to diamonds, dear. I see his eyes whenever I want to. Another thing no one else can do. And then Shauna goes, you hide it well, but you're soft inside, Emma Frost. And then Emma goes, only for him.
Aww.
I know, it's so good. Exactly. See, I'm going to get a lot of crying cat emojis throughout all this. And yeah, and that's one of the things I really that links this to SuperWonder, at least in my mind, is that do things together if they embrace their powers, and it allows them to do stuff that traditional couples just can't do. It's actually
And
really cool with
again,
that.
and again, there goes the connection with Clark and Diana because, you know, a lot of the Lois fans, of course, they very hypocritical double standards, especially now with Lois having powers. How Clark and Diana pretty much Diana is more magic based in a sense, even though she has the she has the strength, she can fly, but with the lasso, with her, you know, combat skills and everything like that, she's still, and being a strategist, she's still, you know, very independent and unique from Clark. And we saw in Superman and Wonder Woman issue 6 how, you know, when they were finding the atom in the split, you know, Diana had the sword. She had the magic sword sharp enough to split the atom while Cal could see the atom, you know, and to see how they combine their just that skill alone is, you know, says so much other than having Clark essentially actually dating himself, you know, or married to himself. The fact that,
Essentially, yeah. Oh boy, we are gonna rant about that. Which I'm
right,
gonna say this real quick as a preview. Now, I will no longer call her Superwoman. She shall be known forever as Zois.
yeah,
DC has given me a way better name than Superwoman. But anyway, so again, the cool thing about this and the similarities with the chief similarity with this and SuperWonder is the whole embracing everything you are. Because remember, in the Marvel universe, the mutants are seen with racism and vitriol and hatred. They just want to exist. That's the core of X-Men. In fact, what's kind of cool, tell you a little story. The way I got into X-Men was I had this fantastic professor in college, and she, oh, by the way, so Brown says, Jared, who should be with Jean Grey? Wolverine. No, because here's why. Okay, so obviously you know who Wolverine is, right? Right, Brit?
right,
And the way that he's immortal,
yeah,
and Jean is much younger than him.
yeah,
That seems like something a certain producer named Tim would really like.
yeah. I honestly
I
that
used to
has
be in favor of that, but now that I think about it, I'm like, his immortality, it doesn't look good.
it. Honestly, I saw you know, Jean as what confused me were the movies because it seemed like they were the same age with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
And then, but the, you know, you have the cartoon X-Men Evolution and stuff, and she's like a high school student and he's a teacher. So it's kind of like, okay, this is very weird. Like, what is going on here? It's pretty much the same thing as even Diana and Steve. It's like Steve with Perez, he's, you know, an old man married to Etta. But even
What's
just
up, Kirby?
when you think of Steve's ranking as a colonel, it's like, okay, so if you think of his military ranking and the age that you are supposed to be within those rankings, yeah, he's much older than Diana, even from the first pre-crisis or whatever,
Also, you know,
you
it's kind
know.
of funny. This is the point. Because if you say, hey, you know, Diana's immortal, right? So she's immortal. Technically, this relationship with Steve doesn't work either. By the way, so Cameron says, I saw a comment saying Lois is so much better with powers than Diana because she actually represents feminism. I want to die inside, Brit.
Oh, okay, first of all, where is this comment? um
Exactly. Exactly. And embracing who you are equals turning away from your Americanism to those people. Yeah, exactly.
Even
And
though being American means to embrace diversity, you know,
yeah,
that's what
That's what America
America's
is supposed to be. It is a melting pot. That is that point. But it's really weird. So then we get to X-Men Schism, which is essentially an X-Men Civil War. And this is when Emma and Scott go to one side and Wolverine goes to another. I forget the reasoning behind this. And so Wolverine creates his own school and calls it the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters or something like that. It was still kind of creepy. But this is when the Cyclops' team moved to Los Angeles and live on an island called Utopia, and like Magneto joins them. And then you get, so Brit, you'll actually remember when we talked about Black Panther and Storm, I mentioned Avengers versus X-Men.
Right.
This is the harbinger story of screwing up relationships, because not only did it screw up Black Panther and Storm, it led to the breakup of Scott and Emma.
Oh wow! So
this is the apocalypse of relationship of stories, Brit. So the plot of this is that in a nutshell, the Phoenix Force is split up among Cyclops, Emma, Colossus, Magic, and Namor. Namor is the Lois Lane of Marvel in that he is the character that I think should burn in hell. Because, he's constantly making moves on Emma, even though she is clearly with Scott and only loves Scott. But there was this great line, this great moment. So they're fighting a giant robot creature, and it hits Emma so strong that like her arm falls off in diamond form. So remember, she can't use her powers when she's in diamond form. So she literally goes, Namor, hold my arm. Then Namor goes, at last. And then Emma goes, not affectionately, you idiot. I mean like a tourniquet. It is so funny. Yes, Namor actually tried to kiss Emma multiple times. Again, that's why I freaking hate this dude, because he's violating the bro code. You don't make moves on another dude's girlfriend. That's kind of the golden rule of being a dude.
That is meant to be broken, Jerry. Like,
particularly
unless you are very much loyal to, your friend or whatever, there's no bro code. Like,
well, it's because again, this isn't the first time Namor has done this. He's made moves on Susan Storm of the Fantastic Four, even though she's married to Reed. So I'm like,
oh yeah.
So that's why I freaking cannot stand this man. And I rejoice when, again, last time we talked about the Squadron Supreme, I cheered when I read in the comic book that he got his head chopped off by Hyperion. I was like, yes! Can we keep him dead? Anyway, so then we get to the aftermath. Okay, so actually, hang on. So what happens is in Avengers versus X-Men, they do this thing where if you knock out one of the five, their powers, their Phoenix part gets redistributed among the other four. So they're in the middle of a war with the Avengers and kicking their asses, mind you. So the Avengers managed to whittle them down to just Emma Frost and Cyclops. And okay, Cyclops, wanting power, knocks out Emma Frost himself and takes her power. And when I'm reading this, and I'm like, that is such BS. This is the most contrived. I love Avengers versus X-Men to a point. The ending is not it. Because remember, this is also the storyline that led to Storm and Black Panther breaking up.
So it's basically Marvel's truth.
Actually, it's worse. This is Marvel's DC Rebirth.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all I had to say in terms of how much damage it did. So then you get to the Uncanny X-Men, and this is where a lot of people's negative opinions about Cyclops come from. Where, okay, so the harbinger of ruining characters, Bendis, shows up, and he starts writing the X-Men. Now, Cyclops becomes basically a terrorist, and I'm like, what the hell, guys? And this is where so the other thing that Bendis does to show Scott how far he's fallen, he has Beast reach into the past and take the younger selves of Cyclops, of the original X-Men, of Cyclops, Emma Frost, no, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman. This is also how Iceman turns gay in the Marvel universe, because literally Jean Grey reads Bobby Drake's mind and goes, "Oh, you're gay."
Yeah, I
I'm
saw that on
sorry.
Twitter.
That is the most. You don't out someone like that. And you can also make the argument that he's not gay. She just put the suggestion in his head. But anyway, so they make him a terrorist, and then they literally have a scene of a breakup, and it's like, this is the Superman rebirth of the X-Men in my mind, where they completely character assassinate Superman and bash his previous relationship.
Rebirth and Injustice combined.
And Injustice, yes, exactly. So then we get to Death of X. So this predicate. So do you know who the Inhumans are?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, when Marvel went bankrupt, they sold the movie rights to a lot of their franchises, like the X-Men, Thor, Fantastic Four, and Hulk. So they couldn't make movies on the X-Men. So the head of Marvel didn't want to like emphasize the mutants in the comics. So he tried to replace them with the Inhumans. That was kind of the point of this, where they discovered that the Terrigen mist that gives a mutant, an Inhuman, their powers is toxic to mutants. So that's what happened to Cyclops. He gets exposed to that and dies. And this leads to Emma Frost being a villain and starting lying to the X-Men to start a war with the Inhumans. And I'm like, well, that is BS. But it did lead to this nice little moment. So after Cyclops comes back to life, because death means absolutely zero in comics, you get this cool thing. So Emma discovers that Cyclops is still alive. So so in the left panel, she is like hiding herself from being perceived by him, and she just wants to like talk this out. So she says, "I don't know how you're back, but I know, but it means one thing, Scott, is that I love you, Scott Summers. I've hoped every single day that you knew that when you died, and I hope you remember it now. I know that if I tried to stop you from saving the world, it would destroy you, but I need you to be careful for me. Stay out of sight. You do that, and I will find a way for us to be together again. I promise."
Oh.
Yeah. It's almost like the writer is like, I know that editorial doesn't want Scott with Emma, but I'm going to try to. And yes, Cameron. Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't be taking the writings of Brian Michael Bendis as gospel. We all know, because at this point, Brit, this was during the wind down of his career where his skills started to slip, because he used to be a fantastic writer. Like in the beginning, he was practically running the entire line. So at a certain point, he started to like get really bad, and he ignores continuity all the time and makes up his own. And then this is around the time, actually 2 years after this, he came to DC, and that's where we get his stupid Superman run. That is where you get all this. Jared, is Nightwing Scott Summers' version of Marvel? Because remember, even sometimes their hairstyle matches. Maybe that's true. Oh, yeah, exactly. There you go. I'll give you that. Unless you're well, here's the thing. All three of those characters have come back to life in some way with Flashpoint and Spider-Verse. So even they have come back to life. So that's the Death of X. Then we get to the Orgy Island era of X-Men, the Krakoa era. Now, I call it that, but they've come out and said that there was no like mass orgies things going on. People just made those assumptions because some comic book fans are a little pervy. It's also because Jonathan Hickman, in all of his books, he has like little maps, and it turns out that like Scott and Wolverine's rooms both had a door to Jean's room, and somehow that connected. Or like Scott would walk around in a robe around Wolverine, and I'm like, that does not connect the two. Or you also had Mr. Sinister starting a rumor that the four of these characters, Scott, Jean, Emma, and Scott, Jean, Emma, and Wolverine were in a quintuple relationship, and I'm like, you're taking the word of someone whose literal name is Sinister as truth. That's why I never bought it. And they did hint through dialogue that Scott and Emma still very much love each other in certain moments, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, the era. This is the other reason why this is in my mind the Marvel SuperWonder, because even though they're not technically together, or like they haven't been, or like even the times they weren't together, they were dropping many hints that these two did very much love each other if you read into the dialogue a little bit.
So you're saying the ambiguity.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't mean the Conrad version of ambiguity, because we all know that doesn't work. Oh, I assure you, Scott knows about getting his hands dirty. Oh, boy. I think Emma may say that at some point.
I think she would say it a little bit more explicit, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And then Marvel put her with Tony so yes, but they undid that. So, okay, in the recent Iron Man run, so this was during the time when the Krakoa era was ending and the mutant island was being destroyed. Emma left, and for security, she married Tony Stark. And honestly, it was a pretty decent run. But again, being reminded of this, I'm like, no, it doesn't work. They try to make Iron Man also associated with the X-Men, because the group that was hunting mutants called Orcus was using Stark tech in their Sentinel robots. But still, I'm like, no, you can't. If you can't do that. Ultimately, just doesn't work. That's like trying to pair Wonder Woman with a misogynist named Tom Tresser, or a man with the lazy ass name of Trevor Barnes.
You're not gonna let that go.
Never. Here's the thing. I expected so much. Well, here's the thing. What should I expect from a writer a writer named Gail Simone, who puts literal racism in her X-Men books now, or a writer who said that Wonder Woman belongs with Batman because he's the bad boy?
Yeah.
What do I expect at that point? I like a lot of his Wonder Woman run, but I'm sorry, Phil Jimenez, if some of you are watching this, that is extremely lazy. And Wonder Woman does not go with the bad boys.
Right.
You should know this. It was kind of funny. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but like a lot of people like dragging his run. People were like, I will not tolerate the Jimenez like slander. And then everyone else is like, yeah, well, did you actually read it? It doesn't hold up that well.
Right. It's crazy how a lot of these runs, just like Man of Steel, the thing is, the 80s were the 80s, and some things came out of it good, which is basically, movies and music. But comic book storylines, not so much. You do have Perez that has held up quite nicely. But yeah, everything else, and I would say Batman pretty much, came out on top, literally being DC's, current cash cow. But yeah, his popularity definitely dwindled within the 80s, was already deteriorating within the 70s. Wonder Woman pretty much, torpedoed by the end of Pre-Crisis, in trying to have her, this um obsessed with Steve and everything like that. And once you have that reboot, you had the chance to do something different. But yet DC still, backpedaling and get cold feet. And with Clark and Diana's relationship, even if they weren't together like right then within that time, they still could have gave it like, well, we're not going to put them together right away, but we're just going to keep building on it. And we're going to, have them, if you're going to use the characters as mouthpieces, you might as well have them say it in a sense of not right now. Diana is still very young and green, and she's still trying to adjust, from the to man's world and everything. And Clark, he's still has some growing up to do himself. So, but to cut it off completely and make it awkward at first, it just seemed like, yeah, you're intentionally sabotaging, your storytelling abilities. And then now we are stuck. You know, DC keeps um, doing the same stories over and over again. Old house, no repairs, new paint. That's all it is.
Exactly. And so going to similarities. Now, okay, yeah, but both of them are power couples, obviously, and both of them go against the traditional relationships of both characters. I don't think Emma has a traditional relationship, so that's one difference between her and Wonder Woman. But both the pairings really go against tradition. And by the way,
Well,
Kirby,
honestly, you can't.
yeah, go ahead.
You, even with Steve, I mean, Diana is traditional in a sense of that is who he's supposed to be, but because like 9 times out of 10, Steve is not her love interest, you really can't put him in that position of traditional for some reason. The only reason why they try to put Steve there by default is because of, trying to still push him as um the same level of Lois, but it's even more annoying. They're both annoying, but it's kind of like Steve is just by default, and that I would say that Emma and Diana, they don't have specific love interests.
By the way, can I say I just checked our group chat and the Trinity chat, and all of a sudden I see in all caps who said that that Lois of Powers is feminist. I love that. I love you, Brit. Don't ever change.
No, I really want to know who said that because if we have to, you know, roll up a little bit, we definitely will because that really um this whole thing of Lois having powers, it sets off some alarms. um
Trust me, we will talk about that
yeah.
in a second. Save your rage. Save your rage. All right. Kirby says the jail series made me like Batman and Wonder Woman. That's not Wonder Woman. That is definitely not Wonder Woman. But anyway, so Brit, okay. In light of everything I just told you, what do you think?
Okay, so yeah, it's the execution of the stories. Yeah, it might have started controversial, and Emma, I see no difference between, Selena was a villain at first. Morally gray, but she was a villain. Now she's more anti-hero or full-on hero, you know. With Emma, I just think that with how she grew up and her backstory, you have to look at these characters' backstories to really judge them on how they're written. And also specifically look at who's writing the characters because you can have a Tomasi basically and
No,
huh?
no, I'm making a joke.
Oh, you can have a Tomasi and the character is a good character, but to purposely character assassinate, you know, um, and that's pretty much what we dealt with. So I see how Emma has been. And then, of course, like you said, it seems like she was used to give Scott a boost, um,
Hmm.
as far as for confidence as a leader, and things like that, to get away from that Boy Scout image especially with going against Wolverine and how, he was popular with Hugh Jackman and became like this face of the X-Men. Pretty much the same thing as how Batman became the face of DC and the Justice League
Yeah,
when it's supposed to be Superman. So you have to have Superman be a little bit more assertive, but not turn evil. And it feels like that's what the writers do. Just because you're not making him into the Boy Scout doesn't mean that he has to go to the extreme of a tyrant. And that's pretty much what Injustice was. Um, that's pretty much why these fans don't really understand that New 52 Superman, he had a backbone. He was assertive. He was um he had a little bit of rebellion in him because he was the modern golden age Superman. When you harken back to those harsher kind of characteristics of these characters that made them stand out because society, you know, is a little bit more sensitive, then yeah, we can't get that type of um I wouldn't even call it hardcore. I would just say just Superman being an actual leader. We can't have that. So it
exactly.
seems like that's the problem too, kind of sort of with Scott. And we saw that kind of in X-Men 97
Hmm.
when Scott he tried to be a little bit assertive and it made it seem like he was just angry a little bit, for no reason or had like a wasn't likable for a moment. But it's kind of like, no, you know, again, you are just looking at this character as he needs to be a doormat or he needs to be the Boy Scout of just being sensitive or whatever. No, we need a Boy Scout can be assertive. It can be, that's what that is. Um, and with Emma and Diana, that is they bring that out of Scott and Clark. Just being a leader, just being, themselves. And now I have an appreciation for this couple, and a better understanding and why I'm such an advocate for the multiverse. For not all pairings are good. So I wouldn't say that, yeah, explore every couple, possible. No, don't do that. But
Like,
just
I'm sorry, people who want Wonder Woman with Cheetah. That ain't happening in any universe.
right, not something like that, but just something that makes sense, that's healthy for, let's say that's healthy for the character and that actually has a story, um, a proper story, like Clark and Diana. You can tell a story of the immigrant and the refugee and how inspirational they are as these two powerful, well-known characters. But it's not just about powers. It's not that. It's just that again they're inspirational, and you can go through this journey with them. And the same thing with Scott and Emma. You can go through this very complex, um, controversial, a little bit darker type um, journey with them in as a relationship, but it still can, with the whole redemption thing, it still can, if written correctly, can be healthy.
Exactly. So then, and by the way, Kirby asked, "What if Steve and Lois got together?" Well, that would be a very irrelevant book. So then we
It would
get to,
be
yeah, go ahead.
it would be irrelevant, very boring, and just
Sugar Honey Iced
too
Tea.
that and very dysfunctional. I mean, you will be spilling a lot of sugar honey icing.
Exactly. So then the differences with Super Wonder, it's that yes, it's more unlike actually. No, Brit, weren't you summarize for me the differences for Super Wonder?
Okay, so yeah, like I said, Clark and Diana's relationship is it's a little bit more fluff.
Hmm.
You can go a little dark with their relationship as we are doing in Shelterverse, but in DC canon, um, well, I wouldn't say that because you have Kingdom Come. But overall, their relationship is still built on a friendship and that, a little bit fluffier. Scott and Emma is a little bit darker. It's more of a mental thing, and also the back and forth, even more so of it's kind of like you're really going through the trenches with them, especially with the whole manipulation thing. Emma's redemption of being a villain, and trying to keep Scott from, anything that he does that's not Boy Scout like. You have to make sure that Emma isn't dragged in it. And it's the same thing with Diana too. Is that um like with Injustice or with the whole humanity thing, if she calls him Cal, you have to make sure that these two female characters aren't blamed for if these male characters fall off the deep end.
Exactly. Exactly. So you also have like yeah. So and a lot of this is like Clark and Diana are like the straight up like not morally ambiguous, and obviously you have Scott and Emma's very morally
Right.
ambiguous. But so you have that. So then we have the fan perception, the writers and the editors. Oh boy.
Right. So the fans, I would say Clark and Diana have a little bit more of an issue because the DC traditional fans are very, I mean, very vocal.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that that they support DC though. And as we see that of DC's sales, um, but you have this back and forth. The thing is with Marvel is it's kind of like they enjoy the controversy, and they will that um give that to the fans, and the fans will support it anyway. And you also have this back and forth thing with it, pretty much all. I saw a tweet the other day where they said the X-Men, they basically are very dysfunctional, where they break up, make up, and like everyone is cheating on each other as well. So it's kind of like that's their thing to do. Um,
Hmm.
of course, we don't advocate that. Um, it's very much soap opera,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's pretty much why fans, I think, even if they are going back and forth with the shipping wars and stuff like that, it's still you have that sort of balance of support, a little bit more. Superman and Wonder Woman have support, obviously, but DC, it seems like um, they cower out to their traditional fans. They're still stuck on nostalgia. Um, as far as the writers, of course, what Dandy Dio said about the writers and editorial actually, it's pure laziness, And like I said, Marvel, it seems like they love controversy and they want to have that attention. With DC writers, they want to take shortcuts of things. They don't want to be challenged. So the easier the better for them. And editorial the same way is that they um they don't want that challenge. And another tweet from actually a CW Superman and Lois writer. He said that he doesn't like crossover couples because he feels like, you know, again, that challenge of trying to communicate. It's like, but it's kind of like that is what your job is, to be creative, to communicate, and to, you know, um, build a unique world. How are you building on the world and expanding if you just limit yourself um, with just one option? And basically, within the ending of Superman and Lois, or just that whole series, really, we saw that it was very limiting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's rarely is the problem with crossovers, is that you do have to like worry about what's going on in the other book, what's going on in this book. So the thing about this is that when you get to the editors of this, yeah, the editors I think are the harbingers of the apocalypse, because they are the ones that, because when you think about it, a lot of the bad stories that DC and Marvel have put out is because the editors pitch it to a writer. A lot of the times, it's not necessarily the writer that has an idea for a crappy story.
Except for Tom King.
Oh, except for Tom King, because he is full of crappy ideas for Wonder Woman. But it's the thing about it with Tom King. The way I rank that is that when you get to a certain level of notoriety, I think certain editors are afraid to tell someone no. It's like they did the same thing with Grant Morrison, where it was practically in his contract that you could not edit Grant Morrison, and he had enough clout that he could justify that. So I think that's why whenever I make a how I would fix DC video, I always say, you have to tell these guys no, no matter what name they are. I'm sorry, you're done.
Yes, because that is terrible to not say no when they have like these weird, um, creative, well, uncreative ideas. I mean, look at the perception of Talia now because of
Or
Morrison.
the ending of Final Crisis, where Superman sings Dark Side to death.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Or
what the? I'm like, that is the most Grant Morrison thing ever. But I'm like, what the hell is this?
yeah, or I mean, just or even the transition to Rebirth,
Hmm.
and having Tomasi, Jurgens, and Rucka. I mean, they full on were able to um throw jabs and use the characters as mouthpieces and basically say, if you like New 52, you aren't a true fan, that what you liked was a lie and fake and stuff like that. That is not something that you are supposed to do, especially with an ongoing story. And if they do have fan investment, you are not supposed to do that to fans. That's pretty much why, again, DC is in the position they're in now, because you've alienated fans that could have been loyal. You had a
That we're
new
loyal.
that word, yeah, loyal. You had this new generation of fans that liked, you know, um, that had a Superman, a Wonder Woman, Batman, a Green Lantern of this generation, this modern generation that they could have grew up with, but yet you turn back to an old, midlife crisis.
That's the name of the DC rebirth crisis, midlife
Right,
crisis.
right. You have Superman, basically this poster man for the nuclear conservative, Americanized in the worst way possible, family. And at this moment in time, even at that time, people were not, especially of minority or POC. No, that wasn't gonna fly, because Superman again. And the weird thing is, DC, they sent out a tweet advertising Superman as a refugee, but yet you have him pretty much downing his home world. That contradicting marketing there just really showed how um, the communication was still off, and also just DC didn't know what to do. They were just going by Jurgens was able to get clout from DCEU adapting Death of Superman. So, of course, he wanted the Superman version that he worked on, and everything,
Mm-hmm.
basically, everything that wasn't written by him, even within Post Crisis, it basically was null and void. So it wasn't just New 52 that he wanted to throw out, it was everything after he left the books, which is very selfish.
Again,
Ruck,
that is why I always say, honestly, I've added a new thing to my Howard Fix DC. You have to age out these old writers because all they want to do is write in the time period that they were in. And honestly, we're not there anymore. They are constantly, honestly, what it probably is there because most of these people are very old and they want to remain but back in the time period when they were young. So they want to write these characters like they did when they were young.
yes, it was very one hit wonder type thing, greatest hits.
Oh, Dan
Um,
Jurgens?
yes. And oh wait, I just got what you meant. Not well, I can't say greatest hits because it wasn't great. Um, maybe a one hit wonder because of Death of Superman, but even that is being too generous. But either way, it's still the fact of, just this nostalgia trip. And even with Rucka 2, it was basically he wanted to continue um, where he left off within his previous run, but obviously he veered off to, much rather just crap on New 52. And, for you to basically justify your run and solely focus on a relationship, it really showed how threatened they were.
They were because again, they didn't expect Superman and Wonder Woman to do as well as it did. So when it exploded, they were like, "Oh no!" Which is why
Right.
the first thing that I would do if I got brought in as head of DC Comics, I would legit have Dan Jurgens write the issue where Superman and Wonder Woman get back together. I would force him to. I would say if you or Tomasi if he ever came back, because I would say if you ever want to write DC Comics again, you're gonna write this and you're gonna like it. That would be the hilarious way to do it.
I mean, you want to have creative freedom. That's what even
Mhm.
the absolute verse is supposed to be, because mainline is so restrictive. And I believe Scott Snyder said that the mainline is very conservative
Mhm.
and, limiting. They know that. But yet, when you have the absolute verse and you have that free reign, but yet you still fall in line of the same old, I mean, I don't know. I would take advantage in a sense of, again, you are still um, having these characters be who they are at their core, but put them in a different situation. Put them in different relationships, different dynamics, and just, give the fans variety.
Because
After,
that's what you want to do as a business. You want to give your audience options.
because right now, especially with how, again, how small the fandom feels, it just feels like there aren't any options. And you want these fans to just, follow along like sheep, but yet they are going to stray. And of course, the Super Wonder fandom has definitely strayed. We've always strayed because we just wanted something unique.
Exactly, and we just want to be treated with respect. So then we get to Brit. So as you guys know, whenever we do these couples, we do a crossover story. And
Yes.
oh boy, I cooked with this one. This one's all from this crazy mind. It's called The Mutant and Metahuman. So in wake of a multiversal crisis, name one, I don't care, whichever one. Amanda Waller teams with the Friends of Humanity group, which are the anti-mutant group in the X-Men. We've seen them in like X-Men 97 and such, to kidnap mutants and bring them over to the DC universe so Waller can turn them into a new task force M. And Emma and Scott go over to the DC universe that they follow through the portal along with a few of the other X-Men to find their friends. So when they meet Superman and Wonder Woman, obviously they like rally, and then as they get to know each other, they find that that both pairings essentially want to be seen for more than just their abilities or who they are. Oh, they want to be seen as like people and not just like mutants or gods, or hence the image I included of Justice League 12. We're not like them, but we're not like the gods either. Essentially that. And so the characters that I would involve for the heroes, it's Cyclops, Emma Frost, Wolverine, Gambit, and Rogue. So those are the 4 mutants that come over. The Leaguers that I involve is Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. And then since we include him in literally every other crossover since that episode, Green Lantern. I love, by the way, that ever since we did that comparison video, whenever Brit and I do a comparison crossover story, Green Lantern, Star Sapphire have to be involved in some way. I love
And
that.
honestly, okay, so Hal interacting with Emma would be hilarious.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh my gosh. Oh, wait. She interacts with Billy and goes, "You have the mind of a child." That would be hilarious. And then Shazam is like, "Well," and then so the villains. So we have on the Marvel side is Amanda Waller. I mean, on the DC side. On the Marvel side is the Friends of Humanity, essentially that racism group. William Stryker, who is essentially, I'm using the movie version, not the comics, because the comics version was like one of those very extreme born again pastors that was like saying that like mutants are the work of the devil. In this one, in the movies, he's more of like a military guy that was trying to kidnap mutants for the Weapon X program. And then you have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants led by Magneto. And so essentially Waller and Stryker are in an alliance with the Brotherhood of with the Friends of Humanity, and Magneto is just crossing over and causing mayhem in the DC universe to free the mutants. And obviously the X-Men are like, you can't cause issues here because they're still people. And then Magneto basically goes, no, they're still humans. And that kind of plays off of Magneto's hatred of humans. So obviously they end up saving the mutants just in time for the world to be invaded by Darkseid and Apocalypse. And then there's a cross team battle between the X-Men and Justice League and Darkseid and Apocalypse.
Okay, that is good.
And then the story ends with Superman and Wonder Woman, with Cyclops and Emma Frost and the X-Men obviously going back to their universe, but leaving Superman and Wonder Woman with a renewed sense of embracing what makes them unique.
Yeah, I really think that with a crossover with the X-Men and the fact that the X-Men fight for, their freedom in a sense, and dealing with discrimination far, more than Clark and Diana does. When they are put in that environment, they realize, in a sense, both of them are privileged in that sense. But it makes me more so want them in the world of New 52, of how the world was wasn't fully embracing them so easily.
Exactly.
They need to, even though they are the inspirations, how are they going to inspire when they don't go through anything? So we need Clark and Diana to fall a couple of times. They actually have to go through these challenges and fight for, their place in as Clark as a reporter, as a respected reporter, or Diana as a respected ambassador, to for them to travel, around the world and to see the less unfortunate, um, and for them as heroes too. That no, not all battles they will win. Not all you know, lives have to be sacrificed or they can't save everyone. We need more of those kind of stories. And also just dealing with, the public perception that it's not going to be 100% people that are for them. You are going to have at times 50-50, at times 60-40, whatever in that sense. But the world has is still going to be judgmental to against them no matter what. We definitely need those kind of stories for them to overcome, to see them overcome that. And that is the one thing that I would say that the X-Men has a one up on.
Exactly. And you may be wondering, where in the timeline of DC does this take place? This takes place exactly shortly thereafter. Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship was exposed by Hesha to the public. And here's why I have to sit. Here's why the story is set in this time period. Because not only are they inspired to like be obviously fully embrace their like powers and stuff, but they're also more willing to embrace their love because they're like, it's uniquely us. No matter what the public thinks, we have to be true to ourselves.
So savvy. But I love that.
But Cameron brings up, I'm just now thinking of a comic run called Power Couple with all your crossover stories. I know there should be a comic run where like we do all these. This is the Marvel DC crossover that we need, eh, Brit?
Right.
That would be the fun one. I've always felt that like the X-Men were closer than the Avengers to like Marvel's Justice League, and obviously besides the Squadron Supreme, because of the power level of the group. Because here's the thing, most of the X-Men have the ability of like reality based powers. That's why in Avengers versus X-Men, the Avengers got their asses kicked because they're mostly dudes. In fact, the X-Men wrapped up all the gods. By the way, you would have loved Storm, by the way, because yes, at first she teamed up with with the X-Men, but when they started to like go too far, Storm switched sides because she was like, "No, you're not. You're being corrupted by the Phoenix at this point."
Oh,
And
yeah.
yet,
I'm
and
starting
yet,
to.
and yet, it was more contrived that Black Panther broke up with her.
They honestly, when a couple works and they have to reboot or something like they did with Clark and Diana's relationship. I mean, uh, the animated movies, they did it off screen and so kind of like out of nowhere, you know. And then for New 52 deboot, I would say
Deboot.
you had to
Jesus.
kill them off. Um,
I gotta say, Britt, that's one of my favorite things about you is your little turns of phrase that you use.
it wasn't a reboot because,
No, it wasn't. It was
they
a regression, if anything.
yeah, it so it was definitely, degrading. And so yeah, it was a deboot. And they to kill off a super, not only that, but politically wise, in a sense, what he represented, it really, again, he represented being yourself and embracing who he was as a refugee and his, Kryptonian roots, and balancing that out with being a Kent, and to kill off that version of Superman
And call him
for,
not, because I've heard fans call him not a fake Superman.
yeah, and to kill him off and then bring back a Superman who basically was like, no, I am human. I am only American and human, and, you know, basically screw Krypton. Yeah, that really said a lot. of how DC viewed Superman as a character and the fans. Um,
Exactly.
and in reality of what was going on at that time, of how racially divided the world, or America, was and still is. And yeah, we still don't have a Superman that really represents, um, you know, as a whole. He is still very much in that line of being conservative, and in you have fans that now feel like, Krypton is just this really bad place, you know, and
Exactly.
that makes you feel like if a child that is learning of themselves, even an adopted child, that really is stuck with, I have a family or maybe I don't, but then with learning of my real family, if the circumstances are a little bit like, something that's uncontrolled, you
Exactly.
you have this feeling of, I don't care for my who I am. But in reality, you do have to know who you are, because it does go into a lot of, certain things, whether it's medical history or just knowing who you are as a person, and just your life, your ancestry, especially when it's time for that child to grow up and have kids themselves. you know how will your kids know who they are too? And all of that goes within it. So if you have this character that is supposed to be an inspiration to children, and he's rejecting who he is, what kind of message and lesson are you teaching these younger generations?
Exactly. And Cameron says the fact that you have people say Superman embracing his Kryptonian side is a bad thing says a lot about how DC has embraced the Kryptonian Empire. Yeah, exactly. The very fact that that was a plot point in that crappy show, My Adventures with Superman,
Yes.
I'm like, no, that is complete and utter dog sugar honey iced tea.
Yeah, it is. They Okay, first of all, if a dog is drinking sugar honey iced tea, wow, that is bad. Um, Second, yeah, that show being first is basically a fake anime. So of
Mhm.
course they are going to get reel in the generation who is very much obsessed with anime. Then again, the message that you send there is that Superman is supposed to be just this happy-go-lucky Boy Scout, like fluffy, soft boy, and
Well,
he,
remember, this is the show that thought that Jimmy Olsen and Kara was a good couple.
yeah, that too, um, and all he wants is to be normal, and honestly, what is normal? Everyone has a unique normal. So normal is different for everyone. Even that is different. So, they can't say that he wants to be normal, because there's not a normal. And if you want to be mortal, you know, then get rid of the powers then. Don't wear the S, because if you're wearing the S, you are representing Krypton, you're representing the House of L, and if you don't like it, then why are you wearing the crest?
Exactly. So, before we wrap up our discussion of Scott and Emma and move on to our reviews, I wanted to show off. So, the relationship of Scott and Emma has actually been shown in other media. So, what you have here. So, first off, yes, they are in the Lego Superheroes game. Now, it's kind of cool. You can turn Emma into diamonds, and when you blast her with Cyclops' beams while she's in her diamond form, the beam will bounce off her. It's actually really cool. And so they showed the relationship. So obviously, Emma herself has shown up in X-Men the animated series, but the relationship, it's the sort of tension between the two was in a show called Wolverine the X-Men, which basically involves a lot of time travel shenanigans, and also in the X-Men anime that came out, that is it is the most amazing thing ever. Brit, you really ought to check this thing out. And
Definitely will.
yeah, exactly. And so they basically play off of that. It's like since the Morrison run, whenever they have Emma Frost show up, they definitely put her with Cyclops in some way, which is why I'm interested in X-Men 97, because she showed up in that show and she has her, they're basically doing runs. So I'm like, how commit, and they said they're going back to the Morrison suit. So what I'm wondering is, how committed are you guys to doing that? Because if you are, it does lead to something pretty cool in the animated show. I'm just saying.
Oh.
It definitely does lead to that. And then Emma has shown up in really crappy live action stuff. Like she was an X-Men Origins Wolverine as like a younger version. She was an X-Men First Class, which, all right, in no way is this Emma Frost. Wait, hang on, I'm trying to go over the right thing. In no way is this woman in any way a representation of Emma Frost. Emma Frost has charisma. I'm sorry, January Jones does not. And she's basically Sebastian Shaw's lackey in the movie, and that is not who Emma is.
I mean, they wanted a generic blonde. I guess that's basically what they're doing. You know, anytime they have a character, especially adaptation that's pretty much a minor role, yeah, they're going to do the bare minimum, and it's basically like, okay, well, at least you look like the character.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then she was also in a really bad made for TV movie called Generation X, but I haven't seen that, so I'm not going to really go with that. So, now we're going to get to our reviews. So, DC did something recently.
They always do something.
Well, yeah, exactly. They do a lot of crap, but this one, Zois lives. She is so they released a Superwoman special, which should say Zoe special, but then again, DC is not doing a lot of right stuff. That basically explains where she got her powers, and they heavily imply she got her powers from General Zod. How did Amanda Waller get Zod's powers? I don't know, but
Right.
the thing is, with this, they have literally from now on, I will no longer call Lois Superwoman. She shall be known as Zois. Oh, and it was also very comforting to see how this issue is being trashed by even the shill sites. Because here's the thing. Ultimately, it waters down to Lois uses her powers for personal gain and brags about it. And I'm sorry if you're trying to say that she is like this great character because of that. No, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. The fact that I love how some people try to call her the first lady of comics and then said that she's been pretty badass since the 40s. And I literally retweet it and go, oh, you mean the time, including the time when she did blackface?
Right. And First Lady, no, I mean, that is the thing. She is a love interest, you know, and a glorified one, you know, but she ultimately is a supporting character and love interest. She's not the first lady because, first of all, Lois and Clark or Superman weren't even a functional couple until I would say the 70s in the Bronze Age. But other than that, yes, she was the love interest, but it was very dysfunctional, very toxic, very something that you just really do not want to praise at all. DC, they go from saying that, oh, they've been a couple since 1938, but
No,
no, they weren't.
no, I have
And
the issues from 38.
they weren't, and their relationship, like I said, has been very dysfunctional and toxic, and just something that um you know, like I said, DC wants to gloss over to glorify it. But even when they got together, it was still more so like you still had to um use other characters or relationship dynamics to prop up their relationship. Alana, she was basically the first to have this back and forth with Lois, and for Clark to treat Lana bad for Lois and everything like that, or for Lana to become a mouthpiece and say how, to cry over Clark, and like he loves Lois and it's only Lois. Then you bring in even Diana and Superman girlfriend, which again, this is not a feminist book. Like anyone who's saying Superman girlfriend Lois Lane is a feminist book, no, it's not. Because first, as Jared mentioned, blackface. Second, the whole promise of that book is Lois getting into a bunch
It's
of
literally called Superman's girlfriend.
but she's jumping in a big towered pitcher of sugar honey iced tea for him to marry her.
Jesus,
You
that's
know,
so good.
so that is not feminist at all. And then when there are female characters within the book, it is again propping up Lois for them to praise her. Diana saying how you see Lois being jealous of Diana, and at the end of it, it's like, oh no, Clark and Diana were pretending to be together to protect Lois, and for Diana to say, no, he loves you, you're the only
You
one,
are
or
his
whatever like
true
that.
thing. I'm like, oh my
And
god.
it's kind of like, if you have to have another character do all that has nothing to do with anything, then yeah, it's contrived, and it's something that you can't actually explore and justify on its own merits. You have to use another character. So with this, Lois having powers, first of all, it pretty much shows that DC has nothing, they don't have a creative idea of what to do with Lois. She was the editor in chief, but yeah, even Lois fans, they aren't uh, agreeing to this as much, because it's kind of like, again, Lois was editor in chief, and they did nothing with it. Like she's just uh, basically have taken Perry's spot, but nothing to nothing significant. Um, with her having the powers, she there's nothing unique. She basically looked like Sasha Calle's Supergirl, and she's pretty much written like a Supergirl, being Superman's sidekick, having the same powers. They look like siblings, you know. Yeah, they don't look like a married couple that's actually um, as equals,
I
as
also love how I saw some people saying, can they make this a permanent thing so Lois actually has something to do? And I'm like, oh, thank you. You're actually admitting that Brit and I were right.
right. This whole time, the fans have really showed themselves that, yeah, the only reason why they can't accept Clark and Diana is because Lois is not Diana. And I don't know why they like Lois so much, because I just can't understand the appeal of her character, but they basically want Lois to be Diana, and they feel like this is her chance to be with the powers, but it's kind of like, that's contradictory, because your whole argument against Clark and Diana's relationship is Lois being Clark's connection to humanity, just being powerless and mortal, um, and how their it, his humanity and being grounded is because of Lois. But okay, if she has powers and they both have powers, and we see the glorification of the powers with Lois, then where did all the humanity go? So it's a lot of, like we said, Swiss cheese type situations where you can poke holes in this relationship and this contrived story. um Even with Zod, for
Yeah.
her to get Zod's
By
powers.
the way, real quick, check our Trinity chat.
Okay.
I sent a little something that I cooked up.
Oh my goodness.
So for those that don't know, I took a picture of Lois with powers and a picture of General Zod. I said, "True love, the couple DC is too scared to give us, Zois."
Okay, but wait a minute. Why are they
They were the exact same
the
pose too.
same
I did.
pose?
Here's the thing, that was an unintentional. I just realized that now.
Oh my
they're
God.
they're twinning. They're twinning.
Oh my gosh. That is so
But
funny.
anyway, but it's like with Zod. My thing is, how did Amanda Waller get Zod's powers? Because that's the thing. The Amazo androids would have had to have drained Zod of his powers.
Yeah, that again shows how contrived this story is. Twitter, I mean, is basically having a heyday with being so confused with how that is supposed to happen. And even with um, Josh Williamson, he said that this is important, and I guess the Zod reveal is the most important thing. But Lois ending up with the powers, this is supposed to be her struggling or something, and just all of that. No, it's a bunch of fluff.
Yeah,
It's
it
it's
is. I do love so many people that aren't necessarily Super Wonder supporters are going, okay, so is it okay to support Super Wonder now?
yeah, and it's also saying that if you want to turn the mortal love interest into a super, it's basically like, okay, that is why supers, it's inevitable for a super to be with a super then, you know. And also to say that Clark and Lois's relationship is healthy because and it's a natural evolution to her character. So having powers again is something that they want her to have. And that really shows that um, Clark and Diana's relationship, it can work and it has worked. But being that they are different franchises, even though under DC's umbrella, they can't. The reason why Lois is more accepted is because, again, she is just a female Clark.
Essentially,
And
yeah. And you know what's kind of funny? She even looks like Diana would if you put her in a super suit. I'm sorry. That just it's because here's the thing. And Brit, this has been if because I've gotten a lot of questions recently on Jared, why do you hate Lois so much? This is why. Because here's the thing. Ignoring the fact that they denigrate Diana to prop up this female dog. But it's the idea, and I've long said this. This is okay. I'm not a professional comic book writer. I'm an amateur one, and it's coming out next year. By the way, there will be a character based off of Lois that I constantly make the butt of every joke. So be on the lookout for that in that issue. But and this has been the problem with Lois since Dawn of DC began. 2 years, I think 2 years ago. Yeah, or was it a year ago? I think it was a year ago. The point is, since Dawn of DC began, when they made Lois the editor in chief of the Daily Planet, because my issue is if you have to constantly turn her into other characters, because when they made her the editor in chief of the Daily Planet, they basically turned into Perry White. She's even screaming at people for stories like Perry White. This, they just made her into Kara. Basically, she is Supergirl, but Clark can sleep with her. That's what she is. And
yeah.
that's my problem here. If you have to turn her into other characters, she is just a sugar honey iced tea Y character. That's it.
And also, the fact that they it's so weird of the Chloe's fans. Like again, they project a lot. So when Lois has powers, first of all, what was weird is that they thought she was a futuristic daughter. So
Mhm.
that shows that she is drawn very young against Clark. And just the way the dynamic is again, it just seems like she's more of a sidekick, and they're with trying to have them as a couple, it just doesn't look right. Again, they look like twins. They look. Lois looks far younger than Clark while drawn, and but all the fans think about, oh, is now that they have powers, they can create earthquakes, that they can bang as hard as they, want, or they can be in the sky and stuff like that. It's like, oh, so basically you want them to be like Clark and Diana, which we don't talk about that of Clark and Diana banging or whatever.
We've been asked to talk about that. The answer is no.
Right. And that's not really a focal point of their relationship, their appeal. But for you to always, I mean, they are constantly bringing that up. And it's kind of like that, you know, for you to demonize Superman and Wonder Woman fans for something that we never actually bring up. It is always, others bringing that kind of stuff up.
Well, remember, these are the people that prop up James Gunn, and remember, he used sex to promote his Creature Commander show. And that shortly.
Yeah.
Continue on.
So just like I said, everything that they demonize Superman and Wonder Woman for, they are now praising it for Lois. And it's really, I mean, honestly, I love that it's getting backlash because again, you are being a hypocrite. And the fact that this special didn't make top 10 of the Bleeding Cool like bestsellers weekly list is funny. And
it's honestly, almost like a certain very handsome bearded YouTuber told you that was not going to happen.
And also I wouldn't be surprised if it's not even in top 100 for the December sales.
Plus, Superwoman is not like a title that's like SEO friendly. If they had called it Lois Lane or something like that, but then again, her name is not exactly a draw either. So
right, Lois isn't a draw. Lois isn't a draw in general, and Superwoman. I mean, you had Lana. Lana is Superwoman. You would think about Kara. It's just not a unique name at all.
Also, here's a question I just had. Maybe they answering the issue. Where did she get the suit? Because it looks like Clark is seeing when she's like doing the shirt reveal. It looks like Clark is seeing the shirt for the first time. So where'd she get a Kryptonian suit?
They do not answer that. She just has a random Superman suit. She has a random Superman shirt on, and she just ends up with the suit somehow.
Okay, children, you're gonna learn. We're gonna learn the meaning of the word contrived. Can you say contrived? I knew you could. That's literally what this is.
Yes, it is.
That's kind of an important detail.
I mean, even Clark's reaction to her getting the powers, he doesn't seem concerned. It's just very much, again, fluff. It's like, oh, you have powers. Okay, then that's it. Even John, with absolute power, John was tormented and tortured, turned into a possessed brainiac toy, lost an eye. And Lois showed no concern whatsoever. Like no type of mother and son true interaction. And then when he saw her with the powers, it's kind of like he just, had this surprised expression. But after that, it was just like, okay, back to whatever he was doing. And also, which is, very, what sticks out like a sore thumb, is the twins. They are like nowhere to be found.
They've shown up in like one issue of Action Comics, but besides that, no. I'm like, yeah, where?
So basically, like again, this whole entire arc, this storyline for Lois is basically like they again had nothing to do for her. Williamson, he's very much a early 2000s fan, and I believe Lois did have powers, or a somewhat of that. They give her powers like every so often because again they don't have anything to do um for her, and but everything else, like the actual emotional resonance and stuff within the story is not there.
There's a
um
special word for that, Brit, and it starts with an H and it ends with the word Chrissy. It's a very special word for that, and if only, and it's the word that the Clovis fandom is very guilty of every single time.
right, it is very much so. And again, with the reviews pretty much panning it, saying how contrived it is, saying how shallow and superficial it is. Yes, Lois having powers does not make her a better character, does not make her relationship with Clark any better. It's just glorifying, really, it's more so glorifying Clark and showing how, again, yeah, it's inevitable, and at the end of the day, a normal love interest does not work, and that you have
Also,
to.
do you know what I just realized? This issue character assassinates two other characters. Are you ready? Kara and Lana, because they've never really hung out with Lois in the past. This makes it look like
Exactly.
they're only interested in her because she has
She has the
powers.
powers. Yes. That was mentioned in one of the reviews, actually. Yeah. It didn't make sense because Lana and especially Kara has, it's kind of like a very in passing type thing with Kara to interact with Lois, but not really. And Lana definitely not. So yeah, they Williamson or editorial really wants you to turn half your brain off or all, and just go with the flow just because again they are romanticizing it with Chloe being basically SuperWonder from Tubi.
This is so good. I love this. So, something else came out of DC recently that. Okay, so first off, all right, so going to Creature Commandos. Spoiler alert for Creature Commandos episode 3. So, first I'm going to start off by saying, so I've made a decision that after episode 4, which is apparently Cersei's last episode, I will not be watching the rest of the series because a couple of things happen. It's mainly because when Gunn used to promote the show, the recording session of the sex scene to promote the show, and he thought that was cool to post, and I'm like, this. They wanted us to believe that he was different from all the tweets he put out years ago, but this kind of contradicts that. So I'm not going to be supporting this show. That's it. I'm done as soon as Cersei's done. Speaking of Cersei, okay, so here's the thing. She's like this super powerful sorcerer in the show in its own continuity. I'm not talking about comic Cersei. I'm talking about Creature Commander Cersei. She literally gets her ass beat by a Fleabag mutant weasel and a Ghost Rider knockoff. And our first look at Diana is speared through the heart.
Right. Okay, so let me explain. So with this, first the producer or showrunner, they just wanted a magic user,
Mm-hmm.
and but Gunn said that he has big plans for Cersei within future projects. He said the same thing for Diana. With the Death Vision, you are seeing basically the main characters within the DCU.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, Diana will be prominent. Um, if they get to that point.
Well, I'm waiting to see that because so far there's been zip in terms of Wonder Woman, even in terms of like Paradise Lost.
Right. I mean, given that Cersei is her big bad, you would think that Diana will have like a significant role. Um, and also the sons of Themyscira. I mean,
Mhm.
you mentioned that, so yeah, you would definitely want to have Diana. And my prediction would be, or if Gunn was smart enough, that he said that this universe is established,
Mhm.
where you have a Batman that's been established for 20 plus years because he has Damian, and the Bat family is pretty much fully formed.
Mhm.
Uh, but you have Superman in within like I believe his third year, and everyone else is pretty much, yeah, around 3 to 5 years
Okay, so
active.
you're telling me everyone is as established as they were in the DCEU?
Um, Pretty, yeah, very much still rookies in a sense in their
Oh,
first
good
5 years.
God. Why didn't you keep the EU?
Yeah. And so with Diana, and for people not knowing whether the mascara or the Amazons exist or not, they know of Diana, but they don't know her as, who she really is. So apparently she has been active, but she's still very much new.
Mhm.
So she's gonna be young and new, and this vision is basically um a future that they have to all prevent. Of course, that is the go-to plot line. Um,
So, what you're telling me, Britt, is that the purpose of this DCU is to stop a nightmare vision of the future, almost like a certain universe.
yes, yeah.
So basically, what Gunn just did is he just copied Zach's work. Wow.
It's basically DCEU, but wow, yeah, it's been a lot of
It's
fluff.
literally the DCEU at this point. They even have a Batman that's been established for 20 years. That is legit the amount of time period that Affleck was active.
Yeah, that's and yeah,
Mhm.
it's
And Superman was active for 3 years in the Snyderverse too.
yeah, it's basically doing them younger, and uh, the only thing I would say is trying to have Superman like as the lead instead of Batman, and wanting
We
Batman to
still don't
be.
know. We still don't know. He'll probably have Batman be as soon as he establishes his Justice League. He'll have Batman be the leader.
Oh no, because he wants they. The thing is, they want Superman to be like lead of
Yeah, yeah, but Britt,
be
I
the
would believe that
connection.
if James Gunn didn't change his mind every week.
That's true. Another thing about this is Cersei getting dog walked by a
Hmm.
flea bag weasel.
Yeah, and here's the thing: as I mentioned at the beginning of this rant, in relation to how she was in the earlier episodes, there's no way that Cersei would be beaten. And then some accounts were trying to cope and saying, well, it was her like it was essentially her like. Well, first off, she wanted to be captured. If she wanted to be captured, why was she attacking the one being that apparently could reverse this timeline? So that's the first thing. Second thing, that they're like, oh shoot, she was hubris. No, but this Cersei would, even hubris would be able to like wipe the floor with Weasel alone.
Yeah, it is very contrived only for her to. Well, I don't want to spoil the rest of the plot, but it's very contrived to what will be after episode 4 next week.
Hmm.
Yeah, to get to that point, and it still involves Cersei, but to get to that point, it's it's very contrived, and yeah, again, DC's whole thing right now is they are glorifying a lot of contrived fluff, and as long as you are staying within the traditional ways, it's like they're fine with that. But as fans are doing, as we are doing, we are seeing how um the holes, the plot holes and everything that DC has, and how this universe is not actually established or being built correctly. I mean, first of all, you start off with C and Z listers. That's the number one thing that's totally off. And second, it's just yeah, you're not showing any type of interest for your A-listers, and especially your female character who was very much prominent within DCEU. And regardless of 1984, Wonder Woman still was successful in the public eye.
And here's the thing: say what you want about Zach's handling of these characters, or like the way, or like his plot of like Wonder Woman. At least he had Wonder Woman be a very key part of even his films as well, particularly Justice League.
Yeah, so I mean, unless we have something within 2025 of Diana, um, you know, the cast and everything.
Which we won't. I'm just telling you right there. Like this way, Wonder Woman's not a priority with DC. Here's how I know: we still don't know anything about that freaking game.
Well,
Or remember when Gunn said he was working on getting an animated series for Wonder Woman work off the ground, and I'm like,
yeah, but
who else do you have to work with in order to make that?
yeah, I mean, you have Kite Man, Beast Boy, Blue Beetle, Harley Quinn
Exactly.
on season 5, all of these, but you can't give Wonder Woman an animated
I
show,
mean, hell,
which
they just announced a Clayface movie, so Clayface before Wonder Woman, nice.
and Clayface apparently is within Matt Reeves.
I heard
No, it's
it's gone bad.
DCU.
I think it's produced by Matt Reeves, but here's the thing, Brett. He could say, "Well, I haven't seen a good script for Wonder Woman." Then request one, send out a call, taking scripts for Wonder Woman. I guarantee you, there's one writer that has an idea. I would even approach Charles Sewell or any of those guys to. Or here's the thing. Actually, no, I do not want that. I was about to say you have Tom King right near you, but then I was like, no, then Wonder Woman would be in the Sovereign story. Okay, cancel that. Go on, Britt.
I would say that I think that Patterson will probably end up being DCU Batman because Reeves is his Clayface is a DCU project, but
Mhm.
Matt Reeves is producing it. But he is supposed to be he was also the Arkham Asylum show was
Mhm.
supposed to be for DCU. Um, so it's kind of like the more he becomes integrated with these projects, especially within the Batman, verse, it feels like he is going to integrate his Batman Patterson within DCU.
Here's the thing, though. The minute Gunn tries to do that, I think that's when Reeves walks, because Reeves' whole thing was he was promised that he would not that he would be outside that he would not be forced to be in the shared universe, that he would have his own corner.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that obviously Reeves, they must have like this agreement to give him control of something because the fact that he's producing Clayface, that it's it's a very complex situation because yeah, he doesn't want to be within the wider universe of DC universe because he wants Batman to be grounded. However, he is, more and more being with producing and integrating his stuff within DCU though. It seems like, and apparently um yeah, again, he's it must be some type of acceptance. Um that Gunn not necessarily has control of what Reeves is doing, but it just feels like if Patterson does become DCU Batman, Reeve is still very much in control of Patterson Batman. So
But
even
we'll
though he,
see, because again, that was part of Reeves' deal, is that he would not be involved, like forced to be in the main continuity.
right, well, that's what I'm saying is I don't think he's going to be forced. It seems like he is doing it on his own terms, you know.
Okay, I can kind of see that, but I don't know. But if that were true, then we would see like the Reeves, the Batman 2 being canceled, and like them fast tracking Brave and the Bold, because that's supposed to be coming out soon. But the point is with this.
Oh yeah, that definitely has no script whatsoever,
Oh
and
yeah.
pretty much I would say that again, if they are still contemplating whether Patterson will be DCU Batman or they will uh want to cast someone else, yeah, Batman is not going to be in the DCU for a minute. He's basically going to be like Cavill
Mm-hmm.
with being faceless, headless, or uh,
They'll CGI out his lip. If you know, you know.
he will have a full mask. He will become like Batman Beyond or something like that. Or maybe they will cast Grayson to be Batman.
That was one of the first images that they had for Brave and the Bold. It was the time when Grayson was Batman, which I don't want that, because I would like Bruce to be Batman, but still. But even on that, how about the fact that Gunn has said that like that he hasn't gotten a first draft of the script for Batman 2, and yet Matt Reeves has said, "Oh yeah, I have a completed script."
Yeah, the communication is, I would say, whatever Gunn is trying to say, he's trying to debunk things and it comes up becoming a lie, or half truths.
Or lie, you could say lie.
Well, I said half truth because some things he says is kind of like partly a lie and partly the truth. So it's not a full lie. Um, but yeah, he's trying to, I guess if it's not concrete, he doesn't want things to come out. It's the same thing of how he sort of didn't really answer, but answered when the leak of what the Superman suit would look like.
Mm-hmm.
They showed him the pictures like it looks like Fortnite, and I think he just did the like eye rolling emoji, and it wasn't a yes, it wasn't a no, and then the pictures on set releases, and he has on the Fortnite suit. So, yeah, it's complicated. I get that, but at the same time, Gunn needs to stay off the internet. And even though he's trying to debunk everything, he's just making it worse because
Exactly.
he's being caught up in his half truths and full lies.
Exactly. So I think that for right now, that's a good place to leave this topic. But ladies and gents, if you guys have any questions you would like to ask Britt and I, this is your chance. Go ahead and ask us any questions you would like to see. And I have seen some rumor, some like theories, by the way, Britt, and maybe you've seen this as well, where some people say that like Paradise Lost is going to be the story of how Cersei was banished from Themyscira, hence the
Oh,
Paradise Lost.
okay, so that is plausible given if she is first of all, I didn't know that, or I don't think that Cersei was an Amazon.
They said Amazonian sorceress, so that's why I'm like, it was she?
Yeah, she wasn't, I don't think. Um I will have to.
By the way, Cameron, once again, Jared, you've made me rethink a ship that I hate and probably will grow to love. That's what it's about, ladies and
That's what,
gentlemen. That's what it's
yeah.
about.
Um, yeah, but if she is to be an Amazon, I don't know. I guess that can work. Um, but yeah, I can see it being, Cersei's origin story,
And
and
it would also be the first time that the title Gods and Monsters actually makes frickin' sense.
exactly, yeah,
I'm like, wait, if it's Gods and Monsters, Wonder Woman should have had a movie in there somewhere, or at least Paradise Lost should be a priority. But no!
yeah. I would say that Paradise Lost should have been the second project because if you have
Okay.
the monsters are creatures commandos. I mean, I guess what's wrong with the show is that it's R-rated, and you just don't start a universe with an R-rated animated show. It's very weird.
Yeah.
But your monsters can be introduced with that. That's fine. And your gods, like where in that will the gods be introduced? And that should have been Paradise Lost.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, Cameron says if Paradise Lost is about Cersei, then she be- better be the Justice League's first villain. I mean, that would actually
Well,
be really cool if they had that.
right. Well, with Superman as well, you have Lex, so you have a really well with the monsters. It's the well, that's pretty much a spoiler, so I won't say that. Well, it's three villains that have been or will be introduced so far. You
Hmm.
have Cersei, you have Lex, and you have one more that again, if you watch Creature Commandos next week's episode, you will see the third villain. Uh,
Well, I'll have to. But by
yeah,
the way, so, I resent speaking of Creature Commandos. So some people say, "Oh yeah, GI Robot's death in Creature Commandos is more impactful than Superman dying to Doomsday in Batman versus Superman." And I'm like, "Wow, you guys can't hold up James Gunn's universe without bashing Zack's." And these are the people, Brit, that tell us to move on. Isn't that funny?
right. Again, it's all about projection and just being you know, hypocrites. And honestly, what does the DCEU Zack Snyder have to do with Gunn?
It
He
doesn't.
really doesn't. The only people who bring up Zack are antis, which is funny
Mhm.
because like with ships, it's like if you hate the ship so much, why are you talking about it? Um,
Exactly. If you talk about it that much, you're clearly a fan of Zack Snyder.
yeah. Or you're very much interested in something.
Exactly. But that's the hilarious thing. Is like even with Super Wonder, where they're constantly like, "This is better than Super Wonder. This is better than Super Wonder." If it's better that wait, here's the thing: if Super Wonder fans are the minority, and if Snyder fans are the minority, then you shouldn't constantly attack us, and you shouldn't be caring if we watch James Gunn stuff or support the other comics.
If
Because if we're the minority, it doesn't matter if we don't buy it. We're clearly the majority if you're treating us like that.
and also you wouldn't be making comparisons. Like
Hmm.
if Super Wonder is, it doesn't matter if it's just that bad. Why are you making comparisons? It has to be
Exactly.
some. It has to be some level of a threat or a competition. And again, overall, that is what Scott and Emma's relationship, Clark and Diana's relationship, it brings out competition. And the thing is, what is so just I can't wrap my head around it is that instead of limiting or ignoring, purposely having Clark and Diana, Scott and Emma separated, it would be friendly competition, with yourself as companies and more money if you would have the two, um, ships basically compete with separate books. That will be something very interesting. That will entice people to actually buy the book that they want to sell better in a sense. Just like how you have Ultimate Spider-Man and you have Amazing Spider-Man. Those two books are in competition with each other in a sense. Um, or before New 52 was torpedoed, you had Superman and Wonder Woman's book, even at its lowest of Tomasi torpedoing the book, it still was competing with Superman and Lois's Convergence book and outsold it, which I guess DC doesn't want to see that happening. But again, it's still friendly competition, and you were still, no matter, you were still getting money for the books regardless.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing about them being. Why would we like let's say let Zach complete his story? That would compete with what James Gunn is doing, and I'm like, who cares? You're
You
you're
were still
still
getting
you're
money.
still getting the money. DC Studios still gets the money. This is why. See, here's the thing, and plus, what you would gain if you were to do that from a reputational standpoint, because you would show all fans are welcome here. Even if you're a Snyder fan or you're a Gunn fan, it doesn't matter. We keep our commitments. But no, it really is no.
Exactly. I mean, we can't, as fans, you have to be either you're a traditional fan or not a fan at all, which is, again, you have a multiverse for a reason. You have these different dynamics, you have these different storylines. Just because you um, erased or debooted or whatever the continuity, which is screwing it up even more, you still published Superman and Wonder Woman as a couple. You still published Emma and Scott as a couple. Um, and that is where fans come from. So you're not really erasing it at all. It's not really erased.
No, it's not, particularly with Marvel. See, here's the thing about Marvel as compared to like DC. Marvel has never ever done a full reboot. What they've done is they've done what's called the sliding time scale. Essentially, it's like take the Punisher. When he first showed up, he was a Vietnam vet, and then like recently he was made. Oh, he was a Gulf War vet, then Iraq War vet, then Afghanistan War vet. They kind of change it, and then when they have to say something happened in the past, they go, "It happened a long time ago." So really, it's been canon before. So it's not necessarily like with DC that does it where they flashpoint every 5 years.
Yeah, and the thing is with DC's, well, wait, they have reboots for the entirety of DC for every 5 years, and Superman gets rebooted every 2 years. Wonder Woman every other writer.
I mean, they may be rebooting Superman and Batman next year, where they revert to number ones. Now, here's the thing: assuming let's say they do it to. Okay, here's the thing: there's a possibility they could do that with Wonder Woman too. If they do it with Wonder Woman, then that means that King gets knocked off the book. And if King is knocked up, and if it's a soft reboot, they can like severely retcon the crap out of his stuff out. Like even with Trinity, they can do that. They just need to
I
be
mean,
willing to do it.
if DC ignored uh, the Super Twins,
Hmm.
right when Kennedy got off the Action Comics book, then yeah, Trinity is definitely going to be ignored.
See, here's the
The
thing.
next writer.
I had this debate with my friend Robert, and one of the things he said was like, "See, here's the thing. Part of the reason why he doesn't think they'll retcon her out is because they spend so much time marketing her for this run." And I said, Well, here's the thing. First off, DC has retconned out stuff that they've heavily marketed many times. Second
Exactly.
off, you can't. It's like he said what they'll probably do is they'll have her they'll have Diana leave her on the island with the Amazons and then just go off and do her thing. But I'm like, here's the problem with that. Wonder Woman's daughter is kind of hard to ignore, particularly if she visits the island.
Right. I mean,
Because if she goes to the island and not once asks, "How's my daughter?" then I'm gonna get a little suspicious.
well, that's the thing with John. Within the Superman books, they don't care for him. Lois, as I said earlier, Lois saw John, and basically after absolute power, and this is the first time they've actually interacted, and just barely that, and no type of emotional resonance at all. Um, so yeah, it's very easy to ignore or have her pushed to the background or just dwindle into irrelevance, just like John has, just like the Super Twins has.
Yeah, I get. I doubt, depending on who the next Wonder Woman writer is, I definitely think they won't be emphasizing Trinity that much. Like, let me put it this way: she ain't gonna be the leader of the Justice League. That's
No.
my problem. I hate when they bring in a new character and have to give her all these accolades that we haven't seen yet, and she'll be like, "She's awesome. You have to love her." And I'm like, "No, I don't. In fact, that makes me hate her even more."
Exactly. Yeah. If you have to, again, use other characters as a mouthpiece or even the writer themselves, if you have to say, love this character, love this status quo, or, whatever, then no, I'm not gonna love it. And it's it's a concept that doesn't have any legs. It doesn't have any type of like I said, resonance on its own, merit of its own. Um,
Exactly. And Britt, that's very similar to a situation that Marvel has with a character named Carol Danvers, always known as Captain Marvel, because they were trying, because essentially when Wonder Woman came out the movie, Marvel realized that they wanted to have their female superhero movie. The problem is they had sold the movie rights to all of their well-known female characters like Sue Storm, Rogue, Storm, even Emma or Jean, so they couldn't make any of those movies. So they went to Carol Danvers. The problem is they then in the comics were like made it so practically so like the Avengers were named after her. They called her the greatest hero of all of Earth and stuff. And I'm like, why? Why?
well, well, they are trying to, you know, well, the thing is with the movie, that was kind of, I mean, Wonder Woman did what, is still impactful. Even if she didn't make as much as Captain Marvel, the first movie, did at the box office, but Wonder Woman was still very popular and very, like I said, impactful and very successful. That is why it's very tough, to see the character sidelined or whatever within this new verse because you are just going backwards. Um,
But it's kind of funny is the reason why Captain Marvel made $1 billion is because they marketed it as required viewing for Avengers Endgame, and it literally was not.
oh, well, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I mean,
they said you very important reveals. This is where they reveal that at the Avengers Initiative is named after her.
well, I mean, that was good marketing then. I
Yeah,
will give
it
them
clearly
that.
worked. But then everyone, but then you know how I know that was right because the second movie, which didn't have any Avengers movie to prop it up, freaking bombed. And I watched it. It sucked.
It's kind of crazy that the sequels of two, prominent in a sense, female characters, um, you know, bombed because they, again, DC and Marvel, it seems like they do have a hard time, committing to respecting their female characters
Mhm.
and writing them, even if they are to have a love interest, they just would rather stick with writing the male character, or it's just something stereotypical in a very annoying way of the female character that is so unlikable and makes her kind of pathetic, like Wonder
Like
Woman is
Lois.
right now. Well, I would say with Tom King version of Wonder Woman is very pathetic. But yeah, overall, Lois definitely represents the patheticness of a female character that's mostly revolving around a male character.
Yeah, exactly. But by those in the chat, if you guys have any quick questions for Britt before we wrap up, go ahead and ask them now. But they see, and here's the sad part, Britt. Carol Danvers is one of my favorite characters. So the past few years have been a living hell because what happens is, okay, so they put a writer named Kelly Sue DeConnick on it. This is the same woman who would later come to DC because of He Who Must Not Be Named and ruined Aquaman. She made Captain Marvel super like girl boss and super female doggy, and then was like, "If you don't like it, you're a misogynist." And I'm like, "Okay, I guess I guess I'm a misogynist now." Of this character, in fact, in the sequel to and she got her own series in House of M. This is back when she was Ms. Marvel. It's a long story, and I could probably get into it on an episode because she is a character that has been destroyed by Marvel, similar to the way DC destroys Wonder Woman. But it's like after House of M, because her thing that she always wanted is to be seen as like a legit superhero or like taken seriously. So she decides she's going to do it for herself, and she actually puts in the work to like repair her image, to like essentially become more of like a serious superhero. And it's actually a really well done series.
Well, that is definitely something that we will have to discuss. And now I have to probably get another reading recommendation.
Because trust me, okay, so here's an example of how the character sucks. So you know the plot of Avengers 200?
No.
Okay, so they discover one day that Carol Danvers is pregnant. All is suddenly, no one knows what happened. She gives birth. The baby like develops really quickly, and turns into a dude named Marcus. And the chat is already throwing up with revile when even though I'm in the middle of the story, but you learn, okay, so Marcus was a being that lived in the dimension of limbo, and he wanted to get out. The only way he could get out is by being actually born in our world. So what he did is he lured Carol to his dimension, serenaded her, made her fall in love with her, slept with her, and impregnated her with himself, sent her back. She gave birth. So in a sense, she had sex with her own son.
Um.
It's an infamous
mm,
Avengers story, Britt. And here's the
um.
funny part. The Avengers at no point are suspicious. They're like, oh, it's a baby. It's so cute. Beast gets so much of sports equipment. And then what's kind of funny, when Chris Claremont was on the X-Men, so Carol leaves the Avengers, obviously, because they're all being a bunch of dicks. So she leaves and goes and hangs out with the X-Men. When the Avengers come and visit her, she basically goes, you a-holes. I was violated and you guys celebrated it.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. But trust me,
Okay.
if I did a reading recommendation for you, it would not be that. Trust me, because you will hate
I,
that.
I I
It,
sent my
it would probably make you not come on the show anymore.
I sent my real reaction to the chat.
Oh, you put it in the Trinity chat, so Jen's gonna be so confused. Oh god damn. Okay. So Brit, where can one find you, and what I mean in terms of like what stories do you want to promote? Yeah, Brit's like just like, huh?
Okay, so I completed 3 one-shots, and those will be posted soon. Still going on with chapter 3 of Shelterverse, and Jared is still having me emotional wreck with.
Oh, trust me. When you see the ideas I got, you'll be even more of an
Of
emotional
course,
wreck.
of course, of course. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't talk as much because you have um, given me the history lesson for today. However, yeah, I know you were going to have some ideas. Um, and also for the Instagram. So, as I said last week, we got to 67,000. I think it was 200 or so. Yeah, we passed that to 67,500. With almost a million views on the Instagram page. Yeah, so for anyone again to think that SuperWonder is doesn't have support or anything like that, yeah, no, that is very much false, and we have a lot of support. And I want to thank everyone who has supported the Instagram page and just this fandom period, because we are all about positivity and welcoming new fans, old fans, um, even people who don't like the ship, just have respect and just listen. you know, that whole thing, we listen, we don't judge type thing. Yeah, actually take heed to that. Um, and again, going back to the stories, I will be uploading more of the one shots, and the one that I'm really proud of right now is something that I didn't really think of to write, but it is something very emotional, and I hope that it won't be within the Shelterverse. However, I do have one in mind. I won't share that with you yet, Jared, until I write it. But
Brit
the
is
one that
gonna
I have,
try and get some points on the board.
yes, yes, that is my goal. Right now, I am in the very, Jared needs to send me at least about 50 crying emoji cat gifs so I can get my points.
Oh, sure, but then you see what I'll do is I'll send you 50 more ideas, and then I'll get those cat chips back, so that'll put me back in my massive lead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much behind at least about a good 3,000 points.
Exactly. But all right. So stay woke, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod. This could not be any more relevant today. Zois and Maxibat for life. See you later. Bye bye.